Amaka, seeing the luxurious lifestyle of Chikodili and the way her husband lavished his wealth on her, started pressurizing her husband Dozie. She obviously wanted more than he can afford at the moment. She started making unnecessary and expensive demands for herself and for her kids. Some Dozie could provide and some he couldn't. But Amaka was not ready to hear no, as all she wanted to hear was a yes. Once upon a time, in the big city of Enugu, lived a pregnant woman named Ezinne. Ezinne had a very smooth pregnancy journey, but on the day of delivery, labor became so hard. But she successfully had her twin boys, Dozie and Dike. Dozie and Dike were born 3 hours apart, Dozie being the first and Dike the second. Dike came forth when all hope was gone. As they grew, Dozie and Dike never looked like twins because Dozie was very much bigger than his brother. Dike was known as a dull child. Everything about him was done with so much patience. Their parents were really worried, especially Ezinne. She feared that Dike was a special child. But after so many hospital visits, they were told that he was fine and will function at his own time. Despite their personality differences, the two were inseparable. They are always together, and Dozie was always ready to protect his brother. After their 7th birthday, it was as if being 7 came with lots of changes, as Dike changed from being a dull child to a very active and lively child. He started bubbling and meeting up like other kids. His brother was already 2 classes ahead of him, but he kept improving regardless. Dike became the smartest and the most intelligent in his class. He participated in so many competitions and won. And Ezinne and her husband were super proud of their boys. After their university education, they got jobs in reputable companies. Dozie was an engineer while Dike an architect. Dozie, after some years, married Amaka. Dike took more time to find a wife for himself and later married Chikodili. Though Amaka tried her best so Dike would marry her friend Adaeze, but he never liked her. For years, Dozie and his wife couldn't bear children, while his brother already had 3 kids. Initially, Dozie was not worried, but when Dike's wife gave birth to their 3rd child, it gave him lots of concern. He started to pay more attention to their hospital visits and became more serious with his medications. He also made some life changes that the doctor advised him to. The last doctor they visited told him he had a low sperm count, which can be boosted in order for him to be able to father a child. Dozie kept wondering because it's been over 10 months since their last hospital visit and nothing seems to be happening. Amaka then suggested that they get a sperm donor to help them conceive. She told Dozie that she is the one that will carry the pregnancy and that her biological clock is fast ticking. Also, age is no longer by her side. Dozie didn't know how to deal with his situation. He agreed to get a sperm donor, but he was scared because he didn't want a donor with any form of ailment in his bloodline. His wife suggested that he get his brother Dike to be their donor. Amaka, how can you suggest that? Of all the men, he has to be my brother. Do you know that if he donates his sperm for us, then my kids are his kids? The same way the ones he has now are yours, Amaka answered him. Dozie, you and I know how much Dike loves you and can do anything for you. Why not tell him first and see how he reacts? But please, don't tell him I know anything about this. Discuss it with him as something you alone knows about. And most importantly, tell him never to involve his wife. Dozie thought about this for a long time and reached out to his brother. Dike felt really bad for him and asked that he give him time to think about it and also discuss it with his wife. But Dozie begged him not to. Dike agreed to donate his sperm, and in no time Amaka was heavy. She gave birth to a set of twins and they were so happy in their marriage. Dozie couldn't thank his brother enough. Dike continued to flourish in his businesses. He bought properties in different states. He takes his family for vacation and takes good care of his kids. He has always been a business-minded person, so he did many businesses outside his field of study. Dozie, on the other hand, was doing well but not as wealthy as his brother. Amaka, seeing the luxurious lifestyle of her mate and the way her husband lavished his wealth on her, started putting pressure on her husband Dozie. She obviously wanted more than he can offer at the moment. She started making unnecessary and expensive demands for herself and the kids from her husband. Some Dozie could provide and some he couldn't. But Amaka was not ready to hear no, as all she wanted to hear was a yes. She started to demand for expensive vacations, jewelries, and so many other things, even though she has so many already. She once demanded that Dozie tell his brother Dike to carry their kids and her with them during their next vacation. Amaka, are you out of your mind? What do you mean by that? They are going for a family vacation and you want to tag along. Let me ask you, who will pay the bills? Dozie, are we not his family? Dozie felt something off from the tone of that question and reluctantly answered, Amaka, we are, but not his immediate family. Dozie, oh yes, we are his immediate family. Remember that these children are his. I had them, so I can as well stand as his second wife. Dozie, you better go and tell him to include us in that vacation because his wife already told me about it, or else what? Dozie shouted at his wife. The whole world will hear about our dirty little secret. Dozie looked at his wife with shock on his face. He was dumbfounded. He hurriedly dressed up and went to work. He couldn't concentrate at work. He kept thinking of how to handle this situation. Amaka is becoming too difficult to handle these days, he said. What on earth have I gotten myself into? She was the one that brought up this issue of a sperm donor, and now she's trying to blackmail me with it. Dozie managed to discuss with his brother that he and his family would be joining them for their next vacation, and immediately he showed interest. Dike was happy and told him he would pay the bills for everyone. Dozie was extremely grateful because he knows that his pocket cannot fund such vacation. After the vacation, Amaka continued to threaten her husband at any slightest argument with their kids' paternity. The whole thing was driving Dozie nuts, so he confided in his brother. What? Dike shouted. Dozie, how could you do this to me? I asked you if it was your wife that brought up the idea of me being the donor. You said no. I pleaded with you that I was doing you this favor as my brother and that you shouldn't tell your wife as it should be a secret between us. I also didn't want a situation whereby she would wake up one day and want to live with the kids. So I gave you a part of me to create your family, so that if it ever happens, I will step in and claim them for you. You gave me your word. You promised me, and now you are telling me it was your wife that brought up the idea of me donating my sperm for you people. Dike, please calm down. I am sorry, please. Dozie, I don't care how you want to handle this, but please don't let this get into my wife's ears. She won't forgive me. And in anger, Dike left him. And as he passed the door, he looked back at his brother with eyes almost filled with tears and said, Dozie, please fix this. Don't break my marriage. Dozie was pained. He felt so bad for causing his dearest brother pain. He lied to him. He knows how much he loves his wife and how well his family means to him. Dozier went home and pleaded with Amaka to please stop all her drama and let them focus on raising their kids. But Amaka refused. She desperately wanted to live Chikodili's life. She doesn't only threaten Dozier, but uses every single opportunity she gets to insult him and talk down at him. One day, as Dozier was at his workplace, his wife Amaka called him that the children's school called that their son slumped, and she was already on her way. Dozier left all he was doing and rushed down to the hospital. At the hospital, their son was resuscitated and the boy cried for food. Dozier immediately rushed out to get something for him to eat, but as he meant to go out, his car wouldn't start. So he quietly collected Amaka's car keys without telling her. He didn't tell her because everything about her brings problem, and he knows asking for her car keys would bring another series of issues and her calling him a poor man and reminding him again how many cars his brother has. While he was driving, he heard the buzzing sound of a phone in the car. He thought it was his wife's phone, but on bringing it out, it was a different phone from what his wife uses. He looked at it and dropped it back, but out of curiosity decided to look at it again. Then a message came in. Dozier saw what he was not supposed to see. He was astounded. He looked at all the messages and felt hot tears running down her cheeks. Who is this person his wife is telling all this? Where did I go wrong with this woman? I do all I'm supposed to do as a husband and as a father, and this is how she chooses to pay me back. Then his phone rang and he quietly dropped back the phone and drove back to the hospital. Immediately Amaka saw him, she started abusing him. She didn't even allow him to enter the hospital room. She called him all sorts of names because he drove her car without her consent, even though he explained to her his reasons for taking her car. Dozier pretended that all was well with them, but deep down he cried badly, and at every time he looked at his wife and wished she was okay with the good life he could afford. Then he decided to talk to his brother to unburden his pain. Dozier sat down and looked at his brother for minutes without saying a word. "How can you betray me like this?" he said. "We are brothers, we are twins, and you treat me like this. What are you talking about?" Dike asked him. "How come you never told me that my wife was making advances at you to the extent of sending her nudes to you?" Dozier's words and expression broke Dike. He blamed himself for not telling Dozier of what he has been through in the hands of his wife Amaka. He explained to Dozier that he had wanted to tell him, but the fact that they were trying to conceive made him not to. He didn't want him to feel less of a man, or maybe feel that his wife making advances at him is because of their situation. "DK, but you should have told me. At least I would have been aware of what I am dealing with and whom I am living with." "I am very sorry," Dike said. Then Dozier looked away and stared into the sky. As he did, Dike noticed that he was shedding tears. Then he came close to him and held him. "Dozier, you're crying. What is the matter?" Dike asked him. "I am not sterile after all," Dozier said. "For 11 years, Amaka deceived me. She made me believe I was sterile, and therefore the cause of our childlessness. I am a very busy man, so I let her get the hospital. We go for a test, and then treatment commences. What I never knew was that she would go before me and discuss with the doctor. then pay them my money to say I am not fertile, and after they give me some medications. Why will she do that to you? Dike asked with so much disbelief on his face. Because she's in love with you, Dike. She has been in love with you from the first day she met you. So she deceived me and still talked me into allowing her to carry and birth your kids. Dike was shocked. If only he had opened up to his brother, maybe things wouldn't have gotten this bad. I keep wondering why she agreed to marry me and still chose you over me. She chose you over my happiness. She chose to have your kids over mine. She chose your sanity over mine. Amaka is very wicked. 2 weeks later, Dozie was in his office when a neighbor called him. His wife had slumped as she was about to enter her car, but before he got home and rushed her to the nearest hospital, she was already dead. Weeks later, after Amaka's burial, people came to console her husband and 2 young children. Dike tried so hard to keep whatever he thought happened to Amaka to himself, but he couldn't. So he went to his brother, who also refused to talk about it. Dozie, I know so much happened between you and Amaka, but you shouldn't have taken her life. This secret is too much for me to handle. Dozie looked at his brother with confusion and said, Dike, I didn't kill her. Moral lesson 1. Contentment is the key to a peaceful marriage and a happy life. 2. Guard your heart, because an unguarded heart easily wanders away. 3. Be mindful of how you hurt people. Some may never forgive your wrongdoing to them. Thank you for listening to my story. Do not forget to comment, like, and subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories. Bye bye.